And for buttons, you could also use poppers. I think poppers might be quite nice, but I've got these lovely covered silk buttons from all those days when I used to make flower girl dresses and sell them all over the world. So I thought these are really, really cute with it. They are very nice colors. So I'm going to use them and I'm going to show you how to put buttonholes in. The distance of the buttonhole changes really from age to age. So I didn't mark them on there because, to be honest, it depends also on your button size and what you want to use. And I'm going to talk you now through the main points of getting those buttonholes spot on. The first thing to know about putting on buttons is that you should have an uneven number. If it's loads and loads and loads of buttons, it doesn't make such a difference. If it's very visible to the eye, you should go for an uneven number. And so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You also want to make sure that you have 3 inches here free. You don't want the last button there. It doesn't look nice. So about 3 inches, which is 7.5 centimeters. So that's where it roughly should sit, okay? With a top button, it's very, very important that you don't put the buttonhole in a position that makes the button rise up and sit right up there. So 0.5 should still be visible. So if I put my button there, I'll turn it over so it's easier to see. Now I've got the little raised part of my button through which I sew it on, and that will sit in the corner here. So the last thing I want is to have this rise up and sit there. Okay, so that's what I need to do. I need to check out that it's about a half a centimeter off here, whoops, like that. Then look at where the center of your button is, where you're going to sew it on, and that is the line where you're starting your top buttonhole, right? So don't start the buttonhole too high up. This is a good measurement, and it's actually on average it's 1.2 centimeters down from the top. But if you have a bigger button, you might have to move your buttonhole down a little bit. So this is a really important part. And then the distance between the buttons by eyesight was 3 inches, looking very good. So I now need to go and make sure that I have got that 3-inch distance marked. 3 inches is actually a really good distance. 1, 2, 3. My distance to the top bottom is exactly 7.5 then. So we have got the same distance all the way down. I think that's really good. So check that again. Make sure that it's in the right position. Voila. Now I know I can put my buttonholes right here, 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 here. Now I'm ready to work those in with my sewing machine. So let's do that. I am going to put my buttonhole in with a mechanical machine, and because I'm doing that I have to work out how wide my buttonhole has to be because it won't do it automatically, and it looks like 1.5 is the perfect width. You should have a little bit over on either side. So 1.5 for my button of exactly 1, right, is perfect. On your sewing machine, and all sewing machines are different, you need to change the tension to the buttonhole tension, and you also need to change the stitch to zigzag. At least on my puff it's like that. If you have the same machine, then hurrah. You also need to change the stitch length to the buttonhole setting. And then on my machine, I've got these 3 buttons here, A, B, and C, to create my buttonholes. So I go down one side, press the tab down, then press the C button, and then I'll press the tab again to go up. Now it's a very good idea to check whether or not you have any bobbin thread left, because believe you me, this is not put on, it was empty again. You go a little bit and halfway through your buttonhole it will run out. Then you do a test buttonhole. That's really important to check out that actually your button fits through, that you've got the right buttonhole length, and when that's all perfect, then you're good to go, and you know, yeah, I can just put that into my blouse. And then you go to the lowest buttonhole that you've marked, and I'm moving my fabric over so it sits on the 1.5 centimeter on the needle plate, and then I move my needle down exactly where that pin is, and then I can go and do my first line of stitching all the way down, hold the tab down when I get to the end, and then press, in my case, the C tab, but it doesn't matter, you whichever it is, you go back up to that point where you have the mark for the 1.5. My presser foot has it all organized in centimeters, so it's 5 mil, 10 mil, 1.5 mil. Then you do the tab again, a few stitches in nothing, into thin air, and you've got your buttonhole. When you know your buttonhole sits really well and it looks really, really good, then you do the top button and you do the same again. You move the needle down exactly where you've got that pin. Make sure it's the same distance to the edge, which is 1.5 centimeters. And then you do your first row of stitching. You go down to the end. Don't overshoot it because it'll just stitch in the same place. Then you do your tab and come back up the other side. And I'm actually helping it out a little bit as well. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm pulling it just ever so slightly because it is like a rickety mechanical machine, but I actually love it. It does almost better buttonholes than my really expensive electronic machine. Move it down to the next buttonhole and find the position so that you can put the needle exactly down in the spot where your horizontal needle goes across. Then move the buttonhole foot into position so that the red line for the 1.5 lines up with where you start to sew, and you can put your buttonhole in. And then we'll continue doing that until we've put all our buttonholes in. So my distance to the edge is 1.5, and I think that's really, really good. So that was okay. I could just line that up with my 1.5 on my needle plate, and it was very, very simple, not hard to put in at all. And if you're working in inches, it's, what is that, just over half an inch? Yeah, well, like half an inch really, isn't it? And that works really well. Next step is to cut open your buttonholes, and I know everyone's going to go, oh no, that's a scary part. Well, the way I do it, I don't use a quick unpick or anything like that, or a seam ripper. I find those really dangerous. I put it on so it's exactly on top of each other. You can use an embroidery scissor. You don't need to be like me and use a big scissor. And I do a tiny, tiny little snip in there, and then I go in and I make it bigger. And see, I haven't cut into anything because you do have that little bit in the middle. But I do feel with you. I used to be really scared of this as well. I used to say to the lady that was training me as a tailor, I used to say, I'm cutting now, I'm cutting now. Can I cut now? And she'll just go, just cut it for goodness sake, Marina, just cut. And I know how that feels. That is a horrible feeling when you think, oh, I might just cut into it. But look, it's really isn't hard to do. And you can use the quick unpick if you like, but I wouldn't, because people have done this. You lose your way and you cut right into your fabric. If you use a seam ripper, let me just demonstrate this. Oh, top button. I shouldn't really demonstrate on this, but I'm just going to do it. Put a pin in here. Please put a pin in there so that when you use a seam ripper, now I'm not going to do it because I find those dangerous, that you can't go over your pin. So if you put that at the end, you're pretty safe. Yep, no seam ripper for me. I hate those things. I use them very, very rarely. I only have one because it came free with a set of scissors. There we go. When I was a trainee as a tailor, I wanted to get a seam ripper, and that was the first thing I was forbidden from using, because it's so dangerous, and button goes through brilliantly. Now I'm going to sew my button on, and you can do it like this. I'm just going to show you this option. I actually don't do it like that because sometimes I've ended up not getting it quite right, but to find the position of my top button, you could just put them both on top of each other like that, go through the top end here and mark it underneath it, Oops. Hang on. That was right here. And then you can just sew them on and then open it up. Now, I'm not going to do that, although the professional way is what I've just demonstrated to you. That's how I was taught to do it. But weirdly enough, I find I put them in the wrong place when I do it like that. So I prefer to do it like this. So I'm putting this on and then I see where it goes to. And then I put it on there, you see, and it's way more over to the side. So that's why I don't do it like that. I take my needle, I go through the top spot here, and wherever that hits is where I put my button. My button actually goes a bit more over to the side here. So I'm gonna go right here. So there we go. And one of the things that might interest you is that when you look at the man's shirts, so say you've got boy shirts or man shirts, you will notice that on the top part of the shirt you'll have like a really nice placard and you have like stitching lines, and then the underside will just be like this. It'll be open, it won't have no stitching on it, and that's because it will look wrong if you have the stitching on it, if you don't get it 100% right. So that's why they don't do it. And they would be right not to. So I'm just going to sew my button on now. Go through quite a few times. I also think this would be a really great blouse if you had the opening to the front. Just swapping it around. Nice, oh, that would be really cool. And then once I've gone through a few times, I wrap around just once or twice, create a loop and pull it tight, and then we're just gonna pull it away. Again, cut it off, and that's your first button on. It's beautiful. So now I can do that button up, and you can see here, whoops, it goes to the top, right? Oh, look at that, perfect position. That's what you want, and that's why I took such pains to explain this to you, where to put the buttonhole. I think that's worthwhile explaining. And now we've got all the buttons on. They're looking absolutely stunning. So we're very happy with it. And we can move on to the next chapter. And that is the final chapter. We're going to create the lovely bow that goes on the front. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek here. There it is. Gorgeous. So see you in the next chapter.